We're so done with new year, new you. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
Bored with your boring cardio? Stop pedaling that snooze cycle to Nowheresville and try some cardio that's actually fun. Supernatural Fitness, available on MetaQuest. Isn't that right, Jane Fonda?
Cardio will never be boring again.
Sweat to the beat of thousands of chart-topping songs inside stunning virtual landscapes.
Bet your stationary bike can't do that.
Visit GetSupernatural.com and join the next fitness revolution. Supernatural VR Fitness, only on MetaQuest. Rated Teen for Teen.
Maureen and Jayna are not currently married. Is there an advantage to being married to pull off a transition like this, or to not being married?
Great question.
Okay, well, let me ask you this first. What do you want me to say?
I don't know. What does Jayna want you to say?
I feel like this topic has come up before here. Welcome to How To. I'm Carvell Wallace. Coming up on the show today, we'll talk to a couple that is accelerating their plans to live abroad as a result of the 2024 election. But first, we're kicking off 2025 with some great news. How To is being featured in Apple Podcasts' New Beginnings campaign for the entire month of January. To anyone who found us through this feature, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And this is what we do on How To. Each week, we tackle life's problems, big and small, with the help of expert guests. Whether you're figuring out how to make friends as an adult, how to stick with your New Year's resolutions, or how not to kill your plants, we've got you covered. To celebrate the new year and welcome our new listeners, we're offering an extended free trial of Slate Plus exclusively on Apple Podcasts. As a Slate Plus member, you'll get access to ad-free listening on all your favorite Slate shows. And starting this month, we'll be publishing bi-weekly bonus episodes just for Slate Plus members. You can also head to slate.com/howtoplus to sign up and unlock these benefits wherever you listen. Stick around, because later in this episode, we'll share a preview of the great episodes we have planned for January, and our first bonus episode is already live. Okay. A few weeks ago, we asked our listeners to tell us about the changes they're considering in the wake of the recent presidential election. Your responses have inspired some of our upcoming episodes, including this one.
Hi, my name is Maureen, and I live in the Los Angeles area, and I work in post-production sound. And I really want to have a new adventure and move to another country.
So Maureen is planning a very big change in 2025, but she's not doing it alone.
My name is Jayna, and I live in San Diego, and I am a property manager, and I would like to go with this beautiful woman to Europe.
Maureen and Jayna's plan to leave Southern California and live in another country was sparked by Donald Trump's victory this past November.
Well, politically, I just feel like I don't recognize this country anymore. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. As a gay couple, I think we might not be safe here. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I think there are plans underway in this new incoming administration that could be very bad for, minority communities. So I just want to live out the rest of my life not being worried about
if your government is trying to harm you.
Yeah, pretty much. And also I'm kind of at a point in my life where I think it might be time to make a change. And I've just heard a lot about Portugal and that it's relatively easy to get a visa. There's a lot of expats, but I'm open to other countries. It's just Portugal is the one that I keep hearing the most about.
Maureen is an adventurous traveler who's visited Vietnam, Cambodia, Peru, Spain, and yes, Portugal. But neither she nor her partner Jayna have ever lived abroad. In fact, Jayna's never even been to Europe. So is this like Maureen's plan and you're like open to it, or are you like fully on board?
I'm with it. We're gonna do this thing.
Okay, so you're serious about this?
Yes.
Maureen and Jayna are serious enough that they're taking a fact-finding trip to Portugal in a few weeks. But their lives here in the States are complex. They've known each other for a long time, but they've only been in a relationship for about a year. They also live in different cities, and they own homes. They don't have kids, but they do have friends and loved ones, including an elderly parent, which matters because the flight from Portugal to Southern California is about 13 hours. And if that weren't enough to think about, Jayna runs a property management business and would have to figure out how to keep that going from overseas.
So with technology, it's doable. It would be a little bit clunky at first, but as long as I had a couple of people that were trained that could, drop off notices, go do a walkthrough, and we could do video, I'm hoping to be able to work from there and keep that income.
And Maureen, what about you?
I work in post-production sound on TV shows mostly. During the pandemic, we all had to figure out ways of working remotely. I mean, I'm also kind of towards the end of my career, so if I had to retire early, I could, even though I'm kind of at the top of my game right now, I feel like. And I get some really great shows, and I just really love what I do. In a perfect world, because I have producers who like to work with me and they know me, I could probably say to them, I'm going to do this in Portugal, and I'll deal with the fact that I'll be up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Have you thought about where in Portugal you might set up shop? Are you thinking of the cities? Do you have certain regions or areas that have been interesting to you just based on your preliminary research?
We're only going to be there for a couple of weeks, and I know that's going to go by fast. So, it's like Lisbon and Porto. There's a place called Braga. That's like a college town that we really like. I don't think we want to do big cities, but we also don't want it to be so sleepy that there's nothing going on. Like, it could be on the ocean, and that's great, but like no nightlife, nothing going on. Just a fishing village is probably not our jam either.
So from the looks of it, Maureen and Jayna are in pretty good shape. They have plans for their income, they have an idea about where they want to go, and they've thought about some of the logistics. But it turns out that there is still a lot more they have to face. What about visas, taxes, residency requirements? What about considering countries other than Portugal? How do you manage all of these questions and decisions? Well, that's where this week's guest comes in.
My name is Jen Barnett. I'm the co-founder of Expatsi, and I help Americans leave the U.S.
Expatsi, EXPATSI, is the company Jen and her husband started after staging their own relocation a few years ago to Mérida, a city in the Mexican state of Yucatan. Expatsi helps people wrap their heads around where and how they could live abroad.
It came out of the work that my husband and I did, deciding where we want to move ourselves. We made a quiz. It's called the Expatsi Test, and it's 20 questions. And it asks what you're looking for budget, what you might want to do for work or for income, what you're looking for weather and safety and healthcare and human rights. And then it recommends 10 countries to you. Now, listen, don't pick the first country on the list and just move there sight unseen, but it's meant to be a thought starter, especially if you're moving with other people, because you can start to find out where your needs overlap. And so what I do is we have a network. So I have tax accountant in Portugal, immigration attorney in Portugal, real estate agents in Portugal, and so on, so that I can kind of act like a triage nurse when I meet folks and help recommend countries and then recommend them to the specialists that they need. That eventually led to scouting trips. And actually, our first scouting trip was to Portugal. And then we have a community. A lot of it's in our Facebook group. And so people help each other. Our goal is to connect the American diaspora.
What are some of your first impressions here upon hearing Maureen and Jayna's story?
Well, I have about 50,000 new people who have joined our subscriber list since the election. So Maureen and Jayna's story is really common to us. At least a third or more of people who come and talk to us are concerned because they're LGBTQ or they have an LGBTQ child.
Yeah.
So we've been looking for countries that are great homes for them, and Portugal is one of those at the top of the list.
Whether you're ready to make the leap like Maureen and Jayna, or you're just beginning to get curious about what's involved in living abroad, this conversation has something for you. We'll talk about Portugal and a bunch of other countries, and we'll talk about how pets, kids, and other factors can influence where you might go. Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Defender. For those who embrace the impossible, the Defender 110 is ready for the adventure. This legendary vehicle has been reimagined with modern design for a new generation of explorers. With a striking exterior that boasts compelling proportions and precise detailing, the Defender 110 masterfully combines style with capability. The Defender is built with a durable, lightweight monocoque architecture to provide extra strength for your next great adventure. And its tough, rigid body design exudes confidence so that when you're behind the wheel, you will too. Engineered to meet challenges head-on and tested to the extreme, the Defender empowers you to explore with confidence and embrace the impossible, whether you're off-road or on. Are you ready for a wide range of adventures? The Defender family also features the two-door Defender 90, the Defender 110, and the Defender 130, which seats up to 8. A vehicle made to go further, the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Let me tell you about a new resolution that I've established for myself. Every morning when I wake up, I have to drink a huge cup of water. Water is kind of important, right? I mean, water helps us stay hydrated. It ensures that we are as healthy as we can be. In fact, 60% of our bodies are made of water. So I went out and I got a water purifier. And it is great. And that's why you should check out AquaTrue. AquaTrue purifiers use a 4-stage reverse osmosis purification process. And the countertop purifiers work with no installation or plumbing or anything like that. It's literally you just put it on your counter, pour in the water, you're good to go. And it removes 15 times more contaminants than those ordinary pitcher filters, the kinds that you put in your fridge. AquaTrue comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and it even makes a great gift. Today, listeners can receive 20% off any AquaTrue purifier. Just go to aquatrue.com. That's AQUATRU.com and enter code HOWTO at checkout. That's 20% off any AquaTrue water purifier when you go to aquatrue.com and use the promo code HOWTO.
Welcome back to How To. We're talking with Jen Barnett from expatsi.com and our listeners, Maureen and Jayna, who are considering relocating to Portugal. And we should offer a quick disclaimer. As you'll hear, Jen has a lot of helpful advice about how to move to another country, but she's not an immigration lawyer or a tax accountant.
Listen, I'm just the person who's made all the mistakes first. So that's where I come from. We also want to move for political reasons. We're from Alabama, but we're evangelical. So, we're kind of stand out in our state, not in our city, Birmingham, but in the state. And when Trump won the nomination in 2016, it just scared me to death. We started looking at blue states and we visited Canada because, everyone says they'll move to Canada. And it just wasn't for us. One thing I say, we have red state money. We don't have blue state money. And so it was just out of our budget. So we made our own list of top 10 countries, going through a lot of the same things that Maureen and Jayna are working on, all the paths to get there and the lifestyle and things like that. And then we ended up visiting Mexico and falling in love.
Tell us a little bit about what your life in the Yucatan is like. Why do you like it? What works for you about it? Why does it mark an improvement from living where you grew up?
So when we first got here, it was 2022. So, sort of tail end of the pandemic. One of the big things that had stressed us at home was all the drama over masking and social distancing and so on. And we got here and, in 2022, nobody where we lived was wearing a mask or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And we came down here and 100% of people had their masks on. What I saw was that everyone was in it together.
Yeah, right.
They had signs up that said, I'll take care of you. You take care of me. We'll take care of each other. And the signs were everywhere. We were in the middle of a lake on a flamingo preserve. I mean, you couldn't be more remote. And there was a man by himself in a fishing boat and he had his mask on. And we cried, to see everyone kind of pulling together. And we ran, at this point, we've had 50 situations like that where people have just been so helpful and community oriented. We did come down here without a lick of Spanish and we take classes. We go to in-person school and we're learning and things like that. But people are really patient with us while we learn and we've made a lot of friends. One of the things that I would like to talk to Maureen and Jayna about is maybe increasing their consideration set a little bit. I think that if they fall in love with Portugal, it's great. But when we visited Merida, Yucatan, I said, why wait? Let's move there now. It's very easy to move to Mexico. And we can still visit Spain and Portugal and Vietnam and Uruguay and anywhere else we want to go, but we can do it at half the cost of living and without this constant pressure of living in the US. What is your timeline?
Well, we're thinking in 2025. For some reason, we kind of have this magical date of October 10th in our minds. And so we're going to try to back into that with all the things that we would need to do.
That's totally doable. That's a very doable deadline.
Great.
Especially if you don't have to, find new jobs. So one thing that slows people down often is when they need to find remote work or they need to find a job in the country. And that's the thing that typically takes so long. But you are smart to get started as soon as you can because you are not alone in wanting to move out right now.
And that's something that we've been talking about a lot, is that so many people feel the way we feel. And so we kind of want to get out in front of what we think is going to be a political nightmare.
Jen says that if you're thinking about moving to another country, you should be thinking not only about which countries you want to move to, but also which countries want you to move there, which inevitably brings us to the subject of visas. Maureen mentioned that she's nearing the end of her career.
To get a retirement visa, it's called the D7. You only need about $900 a month in passive income, and you actually can still work on it. So, Maureen, if you were able to work from anywhere at your job, but you were able to show $900 a month in investment returns or things like that, then you could move on a D7.
Is there a minimum age for the retirement visa?
18.
Oh, really?
And I'm sure these ladies are over 18, so they should be in good shape. Alternatively, you could go as a digital nomad. That visa is called the D8, and you need to show about $3,000 a month in income. And either of those would work. And then Jayna absolutely can go as a small business owner as well.
A digital nomad, by the way, is a worker who can work remotely from a variety of places. And for more than a decade, Portugal has been a popular spot for that kind of person.
Countries that need labor release visas for skilled workers. After the financial crisis of 2008, Portugal nearly was bankrupt as a country. They were absolutely destitute. And so they started releasing these really friendly visa programs that have eventually led to Maureen and Jayna hearing about Portugal being a great place to live. And it completely reversed their economy. They're very prosperous today. It's changed it dramatically. Now, that said, over time, that was 15 years ago, they've had to tweak certain things. They had one aspect of their golden visa, which is a kind of visa that you get by investing in a country. They had a part where you could buy a home. Many, many people bought homes to get visas. I want to point out it wasn't Americans. There are 10,000 Americans in Portugal total out of 1 million immigrants and a population of 10, 11, 12 million. Mm-hmm. So we don't even make a dent in any way. But people did come in and buy housing as bad actors, essentially, to get visas and entry into Europe. So they've gotten rid of that. And that's the government's role, right, is to figure out how to make things better for their people. And Portugal is very passionate about that. They were a dictatorship up until 50 years ago, and they're not going back. And they believe very strongly in taking care of their people. It doesn't mean that things don't happen on a very microeconomic level. And we do encourage people to, not buy more homes than they're going to live in, pay fair prices for things, be mindful of the fact that what's cheap or affordable to you is not cheap or affordable to everyone.
Are there any other countries you can think of that have a visa that's as easy to get as Portugal?
So these are the three that I would at least throw out there for you guys. One is Spain. Spain has a digital nomad visa. You do have to be a 1099 worker to get it. You can't be W-2 at this time. You can also be self-employed, but also there is an organization called Spain Audiovisual Hub, and they're so in need of workers in the film and recording industry that they will let you go there without a work visa and job hunt, which is not usual. And I think it would be worthwhile to consider with your background. And of course, there are lots and lots of places to live in Spain. One community that we visit in particular is called Sitges. It's a really gay-friendly community outside Barcelona.
I know, I was there. I had my purse stolen from Sitges.
Okay, well, that one time.
No, but it is gorgeous. And I have got like 8 friends in Spain, in the Barcelona area.
Yeah, it's lovely. Girona is amazing. There are so many nice towns around there. The second that I would recommend is the Netherlands. They have a visa there called the DAFT. It stands for Dutch American Friendship Treaty. And it's a visa that they released just for Americans as a thank you after World War II. And it is only for self-employed Americans. But all you have to do is deposit 4,500 euros in a local bank account and be self-employed. And that's it. You know, you have to have a lease, which is true, of course, in Portugal, too, before you get your visa. The other nice thing about Spain and the Netherlands is that you can move first for a digital nomad or self-employment visa or for a DAF visa, and then apply from within the country, which you cannot do in Portugal. And the San Francisco consulate, which is your consulate for Portugal, is the most backed up in the country. Not the end of the world, but it is true. And then finally, I would consider Mexico. You mentioned having a lot of friends and family, and of course, it's so convenient to get from Mexico to California, especially San Diego. And I would think that Puerto Vallarta or Baja would be a great choice. One thing I like about Mexico is that, of course, as Americans, you can spend 6 months there without a visa at all. So you can always go there and continue to visit Portugal or Spain or the Netherlands, or if you're waiting for a visa to be approved, it's a great place to go.
I had another question for you, Jen, which is, how does it work? So if we go to Portugal, we get the ball rolling, we get our NIF, I guess, the tax number.
Yeah, NIF.
And the bank account and a lease. What's the situation? Can we travel to other countries in Europe? I know there's something called the Schengen region.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work to be able to leave Portugal and go to Greece or go to Spain or Ireland?
So for right now, when you're on your scouting trip, you can travel as much as you want in and around Europe for up to 90 days out of any 180 days. So essentially, you can go for 3 months. Then you have to leave the Schengen zone for 3 months. We have a lot of clients who are kind of traveling around as they decide where they want to land. And so they'll do 3 months in a Schengen country, which is a list of 27 European countries that share one border. So to say, they're not all EU countries, and not all EU countries are in the Schengen zone, which is very confusing. So for example, they might spend 3 months in Spain and Portugal and then go to Ireland for 3 months, which is not in the Schengen zone, come back, do Italy and Greece, and then spend 3 months in Albania, which is not in the Schengen zone, which, by the way, Americans can go to Albania for a year with no visa at all. So that's another popular option for people who want to leave quickly, especially when they're on limited funds.
And what's the language spoken in Albania? Albanian?
It's Albanian, but more than half of people speak English. And the same is true of Portugal. There's a lot of English spoken in Portugal. It's not because of Americans, like I mentioned, but there are a number of Brits. And then there's just also a lot of folks there who speak English. And there's a ton of Brazilians. There's about 1 million Brazilians and and they often speak English too.
I have a question about citizenship. I mean, if you move to Portugal, does the question of EU citizenship come on the table? What are some of the pros and cons of making that decision?
So one thing about getting citizenship in the EU is that you can then move anywhere in the EU. One thing that's really common is there are a lot of Americans who have Irish or Italian or Hungarian heritage. And with those countries in particular, you can get citizenship by going back 2 or 3 generations and showing that you had an Irish great-grandmother and potentially get citizenship. But then people may not want to live in Ireland or Italy, so they take that citizenship and then they move to the country in the EU that they prefer. Really common.
So does that mean if we get our citizenship in Portugal, we can then move or visit an unlimited amount in the EU?
That's right. You can apply for citizenship after 5 years of residency in Portugal, and there is a language test. I think that you can be perfectly happy being a resident forever if you like. There is always the risk that a country can kick out residents, but it's very rare. You can also, we haven't talked about this, but there is still a golden visa in Portugal. There isn't one for buying property, but there is still one for making a large donation in the arts or for investing in an investment fund. Either of those options still exist. It's about 500,000 euros to invest. And then you can bring your whole family and you do get expedited citizenship.
See, it seems like the D7 is a little easier.
For sure. Oh, for sure. Much easier.
You can check under the couch cushions and see if you have that 500,000 euros just sitting about.
Well, I will tell you, Carvell, the reason people are looking into it, and they're even selling their homes to do it, is there are a number of Americans who aren't on top of it, like Maureen and Jayna are. They want it in their back pocket. A lot of them have school-age kids. And so they want to be ready to leave, and they have these lines in the sand. If we leave NATO, if trans care for my child disappears nationally, if there's a nationwide abortion ban, if they close the Department of Education, and they all have these different lines. And so they want something where they can go if they have to, but they don't want to go now. When you get a golden visa, you don't normally have to live there and you don't become a tax resident. When you get a residency visa, you are expected to live there, but you couldn't apply for residency and then not move to Portugal. Your residency would not maintain. You have to stay 183 days a year in the country, which not surprisingly is how long it takes to be a tax resident. So they want you to stay long enough to be a tax resident if you're going to be living there.
Jen just said the magic word, taxes. When we come back, we're going to talk about how living in another country might affect your tax profile. Also, we'll get answers to practical questions like, what if I go abroad with kids in tow? And what about my pet? We'll be back in a moment.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices, and that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies, so you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Bored with your boring cardio? Stop pedaling that snooze cycle to nowheresville and try some cardio that's actually fun. Supernatural fitness, available on MetaQuest. Isn't that right, Jane Fonda?
Cardio will never be boring again.
Sweat to the beat of thousands of chart-topping songs inside stunning virtual landscapes.
Bet your stationary bike can't do that.
Visit GetSupernatural.com and join the next fitness revolution. Supernatural VR Fitness, only on MetaQuest. Rated Teen for Teen.
This is How To. I'm Carvell Wallace. More now with our listeners Maureen and Jayna, who are seriously considering a move to Portugal and maybe gaining EU citizenship. We're also talking with Jen Barnett, co-founder of Expatsi, a resource for people living abroad or just thinking about it. No matter what category you fall into, you should be thinking about taxes.
Again, I am not a tax professional by any means. But it is important to note that you will always file in the U.S. unless you renounce citizenship. So you will file in both countries, but most often you don't get double taxed. So if Portugal decides that you needed to have paid 30% on your income and you paid the U.S. 24%, then they might charge you 6%.
The sense that I get is that the taxes, even with the no double taxation, my taxes are going to go up. But the good news is there's so many socialized programs, and like the healthcare system is pretty great. Although I understand you need to get private insurance, but even the private insurance is nothing like it is here. So you're getting more for your tax dollars, I think.
So you do qualify for public care after 3 months, which is incredible. And the public care there is excellent. You have to have private health insurance for those first 3 months before that time. And most Americans tend to maintain private health insurance because it helps them not have to wait in any lines or things like that, although the waits in Portugal are not what you might have heard. I also think it's great to have private health insurance because it helps subsidize the public system for locals, which I think is another way to contribute to the community.
So what about voting? Will we still be able to vote?
Yes.
In America?
So that's the trade-off, right? You have to pay taxes, but you do still get to vote. When we file in the U.S., we file as South Dakotans instead of Alabamians, which can help with your tax bill, but also allows you to vote in South Dakota, which is my long game, is to get 40,000 people to move to South Dakota. Anyway, one of the nice things about Mexico is that you can drive a car with U.S. plates and use your U.S. driver's license. And by getting South Dakota plates, they're easier to renew than they are in Alabama, which is just comical. We were able to throw everybody in the car, the Instant Pot, the 3 cats, the dog, and just drive down here, which reminds me, I need to ask you about pets.
Yes, we have one little rescue doggy. He's about 9 pounds. He's kind of a wild hair terrier. Yeah, he's about 4. And yes, he would be going on the journey as well.
Well, that will be very easy because he can come on as your carry-on luggage and go under the seat. You do have to have a special veterinarian certificate to move to Europe. I have a guide on my site if you need it, or you can Google it. But you have to visit a vet that's USDA certified and go through a little process, and then you are easily able to move your dog. And of course, as you saw, or you will see, Portugal is incredibly pet friendly.
Great.
Speaking of pets, let's talk about those other little pets, children, which is the question. I know that Jayna and Maureen don't have children, but I'm assuming a lot of people coming to you will be parents. I myself am a parent, and this is a thing I think about whenever I think about relocating to another country. What do parents need to think about, especially if school-age children? Which countries and sort of areas in your research are most fitting for that?
Every place allows you to bring your children on your visas, your minor children. And some countries allow them to be minors a lot longer than you might think. So it's really common for people to bring their kids. My argument is that the country that's the best for the parents will also be the best for the kids because people raise happy children in every country on earth. Mm-hmm. So if you want more of a simple life, Pura Vida world school approach, then move somewhere like the forests of Costa Rica where you can have that sort of experience. And if you want to have, put your child in the fanciest international school in The Hague, then go there. And I think that both options are great for kids. Usually, if they are elementary school, it's great if they can go straight into the public school system because they pick the language up so easily from immersion compared to, us old brains. And then if they're a little bit older, there are international schools or American schools where they can go and still learn the local language, but not be expected to learn chemistry in a new language.
You've mentioned, Jen, that a lot of the people coming to you are either LGBTQ or parents of queer and trans children. I think we know which countries we feel like are safe, but also, do you keep an eye on where things are trending? This populism is rising everywhere. And so do you spot any trends around LGBTQ acceptance where things may be changing from where they are now in some of these countries?
That's such a great question. It's so scary, isn't it? I mean, the whole world as we expected it to be is on such a precipice. The Netherlands, they had took a poll amongst young people there a couple of years ago and found that homophobia was much higher than it had been in the past. And of course, there have been right-wing movements across Europe and they ebb and flow. There are two things that I think are positive when it comes to these other countries. One is that they seem to have these government structures in place that are better created to weather these storms, the way that, France dissolves their government overnight, or Germany just held a no confidence vote for their leader. And those guardrails seem to be good ways to, it's not preferable to people who don't like centrism, but they seem to keep things a little bit more in the middle. Because no extremist movement can take hold in those situations. Even Portugal has had more right-wing voters recently than before, but keep in mind, more right-wing voters meant 12% of the vote. But the biggest thing to me is that they aren't armed. I grew up in a place where I disagreed with almost everyone around me, but also they can shoot you. And, Portugal has less than 200 murders in the whole country a year. At the end of the day, I think that you can have a conversation when people aren't armed. And then secondarily, that these governments have been more tested. One thing is to go to a place that's a little sleepier. Uruguay decriminalized homosexuality in 1934. The U.S. didn't until the 80s, I think. And so, and it's never criminalized drugs, and it is a stable democracy. So the other thing is you can move to Uruguay and apply for residency after you get there. So it's very, very easy to move to. So we recommend it to a lot of queer folks.
For some reason, I've also been thinking about Italy. How hard is it to relocate to Italy?
Well, so I would not go to Italy right now as gay women. The two places I would not go that I might have gone to 5 years ago would be Argentina and Italy. And I don't want to get into some of the things that have been going on. But one thing in Italy is that they're taking non-birth moms' names off of birth certificates. And Meloni is very, very Trumpy.
Maureen and Jayna are not currently married, but it makes me wonder, Jen, is there an advantage to being married? How does that work in terms of citizenship in some of the places that you've looked at?
Well, so I can't speculate about the U.S., but here's the situation if you're moving to Portugal. You can either be married if you want to apply on the same visa, or you can be de facto married, which I believe means that you've been together, probably living together for 2 years. You are just as easily able to apply for separate visas, married or not.
It doesn't sound like there's necessarily any benefit to rushing into something like that.
No, not necessarily, because also you both can qualify on your own merits. Now, when we talk to people where only one person has income or can afford to qualify through some existing path, then it makes sense to be married or to be in that de facto partnership.
You know, I want to ask a question that kind of I think about a lot, which is the way in which an influx of Americans can change the local economy and not for the better for locals, particularly if you move to a place where the currency is weaker. It's kind of a gentrification effect that, you know, we see here in America in certain neighborhoods that I grew up in. It's like people with more money move in, they raise the price of everything. The people who grew up there can't afford to live there anymore. I know that's a big factor in Mexico City. How do you think about that, Jen, when you think about the Yucatan and your own experience, but also in facilitating Americans to move to other places?
That's a great question. It's really important to us. And we found that the people who we work with are incredibly thoughtful and mindful and don't want to be a burden on local economies. That said, what we found is that expats lift up the economy everywhere they go. And governments have the ability to release the right kind of visas. So countries that need money, they release visas that are for digital nomads, retirees, and investors. But in general, when you look at a retiree or a digital nomad, you're talking about someone who is bringing their whole life savings, spending it in your country and not taking a job or voting. It's literally the opposite of colonization. Now, that said, anti-immigrant sentiments, they're going to be everywhere on some level. And populist politicians, it's a very popular thing to be anti-immigrant. Sometimes if it's left-wing populist, then it's against immigrants from wealthier countries. And if it's right-wing populist, it's immigrants from poorer countries. But the concept is kind of the same, and especially amongst young people who may be facing uncertainty, which of course has been abundant during the pandemic. It's easy to turn them against immigrants of all stripes. But on the ground, face to face, we have found people in every country to be incredibly kind.
Okay, I'm not sure that everyone would agree that what we're talking about here is the exact opposite of colonialism. I suspect it's a little more nuanced than that. But what Jen is saying is that while moving to a new country with American money can be a daunting, complex, and maybe even fraught operation, there is a way to take it simply and slowly and at a careful pace so that you're not rushing and panicking and forcing things to happen in a way that they shouldn't.
The most important thing to me is give yourself grace. Be patient with yourself. It is a lot of change. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to learn the whole language overnight. People are kind. They want to get to know you. They're excited. They love to meet Americans because of American movies. And I can't imagine when they get to meet someone who gets to work on American shows and movies. They'll like that so much more. And so keep in mind that people are people everywhere, and they want to be warm and friendly and are excited to meet you. You'll have to go through all of these steps. Sometimes you might go through steps twice. We say you go through ideation, which you've done, then planning, which you've kind of done, then exploration, which is where you are right now. And then you'll get into paperwork, logistics, and settling in. And if you get to Portugal and you decide it's not right for you, then that's okay. And you'll start back at exploration and try another place. But just be as patient and kind with yourself as you can. It's hard to make these decisions when your blood pressure and your heart rate are through the roof and you feel threatened in a place that's supposed to be your home. And keep in mind that once you get to this safe, warm, community-oriented place, you are just going to blossom. It's just going to change your life.
Love it.
Wow. Thank you.
Carvell, thank you so much also for having me. And Maureen and Jayna, it's so nice to meet you. I love doing this.
Yeah, this has been amazing. And
Very,
thank you.
very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carvell and Jen, for your time. And it's a good jumping off point to do even more research.
Well, as always, we just scratched the surface on a complicated topic. Thanks to Maureen and Jayna for sharing their story with us, and to Jen Barnett for all her useful advice. On our show page, you'll find a link to her site, Expatsi, where you can take the Expatsi test and find out which countries might be suited to you. And here's a quick look of what we've got coming your way this month on How To. Next week, we'll find out how to start over in midlife. We'll talk to a 50-something journalist who feels like he's been in the wrong career. He'll sit down with my co-host Courtney Martin and Dawn Graham, author of the book Switchers: How Smart Professionals Change Careers and Seize Success. And later this month, we'll talk about how to get involved in local politics with zero experience and how to navigate starting a new relationship after a divorce. That's all coming up this month on How To. Also, our first bonus episode of the year is already live. If you loved today's conversation about moving to another country and want to learn even more about Portugal, listen to more of my conversation with Maureen, Jayna, and Jen Barnett. And don't forget, you can try Slate Plus for free right now with our extended trial exclusively on Apple Podcasts, or sign up at slate.com/howtoplus to get access wherever you listen. How To is produced by Rosie Belson with Kevin Bendis, Joel Meyer is senior editor, and Derek John is executive producer. Merritt Jacob is the senior technical director and composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Courtney Martin is my co-host, and I'm Carvell Wallace. Thanks for listening.